Of the four gospel writers, only two tell the story of Jesus' birth. At the risk of oversimplifying the difference between Luke and Matthew's presentation of the birth narratives, I would simply say that Luke focuses more from Mary's perspective and Matthew from Joseph's vantage point. Another difference is that Luke locates the story first in Nazareth, whereas Matthew implies Jesus' family moves there sometime later in Jesus' early childhood. Luke says God sent the angel Gabriel to Nazareth to announce the birth of Jesus to Mary. Because the Roman Emperor Caesar Augustus decreed that a census be taken of the entire Roman world, everyone was required to register in their hometown. And since Joseph's family was from Bethlehem, he takes his pregnant wife Mary with him, and they leave Nazareth and travel to Bethlehem, where Jesus is born. Matthew tells the story differently. He states that Jesus' mother Mary was pledged to be married to Joseph when she was found to be pregnant by the Holy Spirit. And Joseph thought this was an embarrassment and wasn't going to go through with the marriage, but in a dream he's told by an angel to carry out his marriage to Mary and to name the child Jesus. Matthew implies that the family is living in Bethlehem already, where Jesus is born. And sometime later, I think it's perhaps years, Magi from the east find their way to Bethlehem and bring gifts to honor the one whom they believe to be Israel's newborn king. Joseph has a couple more dreams. In fact, if I were Mary, I would say no more dreams, because every time he has a dream, they're on the move. The angel directs him to move his family first to Egypt, and then in another dream to return back to Israel. The passage we're about to hear read tells how they came to be residents of Nazareth. Reading from Matthew 2:13 and then 19 through 23 is Stacy Nuss.
An angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream. "Get up," he said, "take the child and his mother and escape to Egypt. Stay there until I tell you, for Herod is going to search for the child to kill him." After Herod died, an angel of the Lord appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt and said, "Get up, take the child and his mother and go to the land of Israel, for those who are trying to take the child's life are dead." So he got up, took the child and his mother, and went to the land of Israel. But when he heard that Archelaus was reigning in Judea in place of his father Herod, Joseph was afraid to go there. Having been warned in a dream, he withdrew to the district of Galilee, and he went and lived in a town called Nazareth. So was fulfilled what was said through the prophets, that he would be called a Nazarene. The word of God.
So where are you from? It's a very simple question that can help identify us in a specific sort of way, especially if your name is as common as Yeshua. My name is Dale Flowers. I was born and raised in Springfield, Missouri. If I were Dutch, I guess you would say Dale van Springfield. Springfield is located, when I grew up, along Route 66, but now Interstate 44. And it was known at that time as the Queen City of the Ozarks. I used to tell people, well, where's Springfield? And when they would ask, where's Springfield? I'd say, if you took St. Louis, which was on the eastern edge of the state, and Kansas City on the western side, and you drew a triangle, the southern portion would be where the two lines meet is Springfield. Due to its popularity of a nearby destination, my hometown is now better known in its proximity to Branson, which for me is strange because I moved away before that whole phenomenon happened. Matthew says the significance of where Jesus was raised fulfilled what was said through the prophets that he would be called a Nazarene. That statement presents a problem because nowhere in the prophets or the Hebrew scriptures nor in intertestamental literature is Nazareth mentioned at all. So what are we to make of this designation? Well, it could be nothing more than calling attention to its relative obscurity, because Nazareth is located inside of a small basin surrounded by hills, which in ancient times made it somewhat inaccessible. At 1,000 feet above sea level, it sat atop a mountain ridge located to the north of the Jezreel Valley and midway between the Sea of Galilee to the east and the Mediterranean Sea at Mount Carmel to the west. In addition to being surrounded by hills, craggy cliffs and precipices lined its landscape. Israeli Antiquities Authority excavation director Yardina Alexandra says, since the town wasn't located on a roadway, people didn't go through Nazareth unless they specifically wanted to go there. It was a remote village compared to the larger, more important towns nearby, Cana 3 to 4 kilometers north, or Sepphoris 5 kilometers to the west, which likely was home to a Roman garrison. According to Alexandra, if we were to step back in time and visit Nazareth at the time of Jesus, we would see a very small village settled by a few dozen families. Its isolated environs may explain why it doesn't show up on Google Maps at that time, nor was it among the 45 cities of the Galilee listed by first century historian Josephus, nor included among the 63 cities of the Galilee contained in the Talmud. Even the gospel writers, when they first mention Nazareth, have to add the phrase, a town in Galilee. This sense of obscurity may also explain Nathanael's comment, which we find in John 1:46, when Philip, with great excitement, tells him, "We found the one Moses wrote about in the law, and about whom the prophets also wrote, Jesus of Nazareth, son of Joseph." And Nathanael, who was from nearby Cana, replies, "Nazareth? Can anything good come from there?" Knowing how remote a village it truly was, Nathanael may be referring to its lack of significance. Or, as others have suggested, it may have been a slur, a statement of derision. During the time our family lived in Fresno, I recall it being scorned as one of, if not the least desirable places to live in California due to its hot summer temperatures, traffic fumes, farm dust, and lack of attractions. Yet Fresno, in turn, would refer to Bakersfield with its oil refineries and large cattle population as the armpit of California. To the Romans, the land of Israel and its people were looked down upon as nothing more than a backwater cul-de-sac. To the people of Jerusalem and Judea, those from Galilee were socially and intellectually inferior. And to the people of Galilee, Nazareth may have suffered a negative reputation. If this might be what Matthew is pointing to, the prophetic word he had in mind could have included passages such as Psalm 22, referring to God's Messiah. "But I am a worm and not a man, scorned by everyone, despised by the people. All who see me mock me. They hurl insults, shaking their heads." If Nazarenes were scorned by everyone, could this be the illusion Matthew associated with Jesus' hometown? Similarly, Isaiah 53, verse 3 reads, "He was despised and rejected by humanity, a man of suffering and familiar with pain. Like one from whom people hid their faces, he was despised, and we held him in low esteem." So if this is what Matthew intended, then the meaning of "he will be called a Nazarene" is equivalent to saying he shall be despised and mocked by his own people. And if this is true, then the significance of what this means is that Jesus not only identifies with our humanity by coming into our world, he identifies with the lowest of our humanity. And being raised in an obscure, despised part of the country becomes integral to his entire mission. But even more telling than those possibilities is Jesus' identification with Nazareth from the story Luke tells when he returns home following his baptism and the start of his gospel ministry. It's a Sabbath day when Jesus enters Nazareth's synagogue. He stands to read from the Isaiah scroll the following words: "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he's anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners, recovery of sight to the blind, and to set the oppressed free, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor." He sits down and lets his listeners know that these words are being fulfilled in their very hearing. And they like what he says and seem to take pride in their hometown son's growing popularity and reputation. But things take a drastic turn when Jesus reminds them that God's favor is not meant for them only, but for those outside their faith, beyond the walls of their synagogue and the borders of their beliefs. Jesus goes on and says, "There were many widows in Elijah's time, yet when it didn't rain for 3.5 years, causing a severe famine in the land, yet Elijah was not sent to any of them, but to a widow in Zarephath in the region of Sidon." Jesus goes on, "Many in Israel suffered leprosy in the time of Elisha's day, yet not one of them was cleansed by him, but Naaman the Syrian was." This infuriated the people of Nazareth to the point that they drove him out of the synagogue, outside of the city, to one of those precipices in order to throw him over a cliff. But Jesus escaped through their midst. The Nazarenes, like their Jewish counterparts throughout the region of Galilee, harbored suspicion, if not hatred, toward Gentiles who lived among them. But of them, Isaiah spoke this message of hope in chapter 9. "Land of Zebulun, land of Naphtali, the way of the sea beyond the Jordan, Galilee of the Gentiles." Way back then, Isaiah refers to this region as the place where Gentiles will abide. The people living in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of the shadow of death, a light has dawned. The resistance and rejection of Nazareth to Jesus' message is representative of the people of Israel, if not of us as well. The fact that God would bring blessing and salvation to those outside the faith had to be difficult for them to swallow. It was bad enough they lived within their national borders rather than outside them, but why would God show them favor when they didn't deserve it? To ask where you are from can be a question that helps us know someone better and identify them in a specific way. It can also be a way of objectifying or categorizing a person as an outsider who doesn't fit or belong, a stranger, a refugee, an alien. The tone and the purpose of our question may reveal a deep-seated bias within us. That seemed to be how a confidant of the British royal family recently posed this question. Lady Susan Hussey, who had served over 60 years to the royal family, had to resign her duties following an exchange with a black charity leader during a reception at Buckingham Palace. Apparently, Lady Hussey asked Ngozi Fulani, Chief Executive Officer of Sista Space, a London-based organization that helps women of African and Caribbean heritage who've experienced abuse. She said to her, "What part of Africa are you from?" When Fulani said her family doesn't have those kinds of records, Hussey pressed her further. "Well, you must know where you're from. I spent time in France. Where are you from?" Fulani answered, "Here, the UK." Hussey said, "No, but what nationality are you?" Fulani said, "I am born here. I am British." Hussey pressed even further. "No, but where do you really come from? Where do your people come from?" The question might seem innocent, but the exchange implied a racial prejudice against a person of color whom Lady Hussey was unwilling to acknowledge as her equal. When the desire to know something about someone is more about our need to categorize them rather than about their worth and value, then we might want to check our motive. What are we really asking, and why? Is there some perceived conflict or fear between whom we regard as part of the in-group versus someone who is part of the out-group, of whom we should be on our guard and suspicious? If there were any lines drawn by Jesus, they were drawn to include others rather than exclude them. How ironic then that the citizens of Nazareth, in order to keep Gentiles out and were unworthy of God's message of hope, they reject the one whom God sends to redeem them as well. They wanted nothing to do with Jesus, yet throughout his ministry and mission, he is repeatedly identified as Jesus of Nazareth. He may have left Nazareth, but it never left him. Crowds of people refer to him in this way. Demons address him as Jesus of Nazareth. The Sanhedrin guards use this designation when they come to arrest him in the Garden of Gethsemane. And Pilate had it written on the sign above his cross, "Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews." The angel at Jesus' tomb says to the women who have come to care for his body, "You seek Jesus of Nazareth, who was crucified. He has risen. He is not here." And in his speech on the day of Pentecost, Peter says the crucified, risen Lord of the universe was none other than Jesus of Nazareth. And when Saul was about to enter Damascus to pursue followers of the way, he heard a voice call to him, and he asked who it was, and the answer came back, "I am Jesus of Nazareth, the one whom you persecute." Though the people of Nazareth rejected Jesus, he did not reject them. He carries their association with his name as part of his identity and as his mission as God's Messiah. And he carries us too. Wherever we are from, whether the designation means in some way, some form of shame or of fame, whether we know it as a form of injury or advantage, whether it comes with it a sense of obscurity or prominence, Jesus comes to be with us and to be for us. And we say thanks be to God.